Welcome everybody to the Path to Ownership Part 1. This is a 4-part webinar series occurring from now until the end of the year. I am Dr. Amber Howarth. I'm a veterinarian and I work for Blue Heron Consulting in the Startups and Acquisition Department. We help owners and clients that come to us go from 0 to ownership in 6 months. And we've had people come in all stages where they're literally going from the ground up, or they're almost finished with their new practice, but just need those last couple of pieces that they need help with. Today, I'm joined by Shwanda Flowers and Ashley Moore from First Financial Bank, and I'm going to let them do their introductions.
Hello, everyone. I am Shwanda Flowers. I am a pharmacist and former pharmacy owner. And so I'm excited to be here tonight representing First Financial Bank. I'm the managing director for our professional services division. And I have been a veterinary lender for the last several years. Really focused on this industry, and I'm excited to talk a little bit more tonight about this Pathway to Ownership Part 1.
And again, welcome everyone. I am Ashley Moore, a loan officer with First Financial Bank, and I specialize in the veterinary division, so work with all things vet, pet, and really, our focus is to help your ownership dreams become a reality, and really excited to kick off this web series. And just to point out to you guys, I will be paying attention to the Q&A as we go through this. So if you have any questions, definitely put them in there. I will try, we can interject and put some of those questions in, but if we don't get to them throughout the presentation, we can get to them at the end of everything. We'll leave some time at the end for questions.
Perfect. So Erin Kaiser has been posting in the chat group tonight. She has posted the speaker survey, as well as you will be receiving your RACE CE at the end of the presentation a little bit later tonight in your email. So we'll go ahead and take it away with our big key insights for you tonight. We are hoping that you will discover if the path to ownership is right for you tonight. We'll be discussing traits that successful owners thought that they needed going into practice, and then what happened while they were in practice. What you can do now to prepare, even if you're not ready tonight. How you can be financially prepared, so that way when that opportunity does come along, you are ready to go. First Financial is also going to cover the do's and don'ts of an acquisition and in-depth how to create your business plan, which is imperative for ownership. So let's hop into an example from DVM 360. In this pie chart, you guys can see about 55% of associates either want to own or on the fence to own, whereas 45% said no, they do not. And that's fine. If you guys thought I was going to be here presenting that everybody has to own, you would be wrong. It needs to be the best fit for you, for your family, for your goals in life. For example, I have a friend and her name is Emily, and she went into veterinary college just like a lot of us, just wanting to get through it and graduate on the other side. She ended up going into corporate medicine and really did not like it. So she ended up making the switch and pivoting to private practice. Really started to love veterinary medicine again and all that it had to offer. From there, the practice that she was at fell into a little bit of a disarray to where the point she was running the practice instead of the previous owner, and she was excelling at it. As you guys can see here on the left, she was in charge of all of these different items. She really liked being able to control the customer care, the customer experience that her clients were getting, the environment that her staff was working in, the culture of that. She really liked being able to be in charge of her own medical decisions and what she wanted to do. She was also able to offer services that weren't available in her area already, which was another big win. So when the time was coming to when she had to decide if she wanted to own full time and be in it, she had all of the things on the right to consider. Her and her husband were wanting to start a family, and she didn't want the weight of everything to be on her all the time. And so when you do own, as I'm sure you guys are aware, it can be all on you all day, every day. Sometimes your smartphone, sometimes your head can never truly rest. It can be 24/7. You guys get the titles of chief of staff, head of HR, head surgeon, the babysitter. I'm sure you can think of many more titles to give yourself than I am listing off right here in this scenario. But with that being said, my friend Emily ended up weighing the pros and the cons of everything and decided to take the jump. And today she has 3 little ones and a very successful practice. I have a great quote from you guys from Simon Sinek in the book called Leaders Eat Last. The true price of leadership is the willingness to place the needs of others above your own. This is a really great book to put on your reading list, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I want to have you guys think on that quote and think what it means to you and how you can take that going forward into your current jobs. But then also, if you are interested in ownership, how you can go forth with that. Now, First Financial Bank will be talking about common mistakes associates make.
So looking at some of the mistakes that we see associates make, really the number one that we see people feel is that they're not ready for ownership. They have all of their reasons. Again, as Amber had said, there's a lot that goes into ownership. You might be focusing on those cons and just feeling like, I'm not ready to take on such a big burden and such, wearing all of those hats. And really, the truth is you will never be ready. Whether, you still have student debt, which, Swanda will talk about later on in this presentation, or, you feel like you haven't been practicing long enough, or whatever the case is, there will always be a reason for you not to do it. But if you've really looked at, what those benefits are of you owning, and that's really your goal, it's never too early to start focusing and working towards that. And it's really interesting, if you think about it, what would you do today if you knew you would not fail? Would you go for it? Is it really what your dream is? And if you can honestly answer that question, if I knew that I wouldn't fail as a practice owner, and it's really what I wanted to do, regardless of wearing all of those hats, regardless of the stressors, regardless of all of those things, if those benefits outweigh it, then go for it, because you're never going to feel ready for it. And what's very interesting is when we speak to a lot of practice owners, the one thing that is very common across all of them is that they would have started bigger. They're now needing to remodel, to expand, to add more spaces, add more doctors. And that's their biggest struggle at this point. Not that they're failing, not that they wish they wouldn't have done it, but they wish they would have started bigger. So, if you're worried that you're not ready, you're not alone, but just know that, you're always probably going to feel that way. And that, just focus on the things you can control and move forward with it. And, there are some keys that we see that make people most successful when it comes to practice ownership. And one of those is buying at the right price. So when you look at purchasing a practice, there's ways of valuing it and things like that. And the one thing, the biggest piece of advice, one of the biggest pieces of advice rather, that we give to people looking to purchase is do not get emotional. We see a lot of associates working in practices, they want to buy, and then a corporate comes in and gives an offer that just, for us as a bank, it just doesn't cash flow. It kind of pushes you out of that comfort zone. You want to buy at the right price that makes sense for you. So don't get emotional. The right practice will always be there. There will always, be an opportunity for you as an owner. So it's a business decision, and you have to make the best one for you. Another thing is, veterinary medicine, of course, you're taking care of the animals. Of course, they're, the most important part of this is your patients, but it's also a people business. So you want to ensure that you're setting up a smooth transition plan when you're acquiring a new new facility. You want to be able to retain those clients and really hit the ground running and make a smooth transition for them as well. That's another key when it comes to taking over, the day-to-day of that business. And, beyond just your patients, you want to try to retain that staff, because that helps in, smoothing out that transition as well. And, beyond that, you want to find the right people and empower them. And, if you look on here, there's an interesting quote: train employees so that they could leave, create an environment so they do not want to. And, speaking to a lot of practice owners, again, one of the biggest challenges people are facing right now is staffing, is, getting qualified vet techs or getting another DVM when, they're working, every single day to try to treat all of the patients that they possibly can. So you want to create an environment where these employees want to be and want to stay with you. Also, putting good systems in place so you're not wasting time and effort, being able to replicate, say, you're ready for an expansion. You want to be able to replicate the systems of one facility into the next one and keep moving forward, and you're not wasting time and money on, not having a good infrastructure in place. And lastly, one of the most important pieces of starting off this entire process is a business plan. And that's really the whole, it lays out your entire business and how you plan on being successful and setting yourself up for success. So, you want to have a good plan in place. You want to definitely get that started at the very beginning and, kind of figure out what your why is and follow that path forward and how you're going to set up your business successfully.
So just like Ashley said, it is imperative to figure out why you are here. Why are you in veterinary medicine? Why are you interested in ownership before going any further? And we're going to come back to this in just a second. Why do you guys want to own? A big reason why a lot of people want to own is they are interested in the paychecks. Not the only reason, and we'll talk about some of the other ones, but a big one. If you are an associate veterinarian, how are you paid? You have one job. You go in and you do a good job there, go home, you have one paycheck. Whereas if you're the owner veterinarian, you have 4 different paychecks. I know there's 5 things up here, but bear with me, we'll get to the 5th in just a second. If you are working in your practice as a producing veterinarian, you do need to pay yourself first. This is going to help with taxes, your profit and loss statement, which First Financial will cover in a little bit, and things like your exit strategy, which need to be at the forefront of your mind. 2, you need to pay yourself as a manager if you're helping to manage your hospital. 3, if you own the real estate, you need to pay yourself a fair market rent. And 4, a return on investment. When you have money left over at the end of the year, maybe that's quarterly for your practice, monthly, whatever that is, you get that 4th paycheck. The 5th one being equity. If you own your own business, you are building that up. And as I mentioned earlier, with your exit strategy, that will come along a little bit later. Let's look at some real numbers. This is from the AHA Compensation and Benefits 2020. And I know the numbers up here are probably a little outdated. They come out with this every couple of years. And with inflation going on and the veterinary shortage, they're a little outdated, but bear with me, the example here still exists. The average full-time general practice veterinary associate with all the compensation, benefits, things like that is roughly around 107 in 2020. Whereas the practice owner's compensation, salary, and benefits was almost 3-fold of that of the associates. So my question for you is, what would you do with this extra income? What would this mean for your family? Some examples that come to mind: paying off your mortgage, paying down the PMI on your house, paying off a car, maybe saving for your kids' college fund. I'm sure you guys can think of many more examples than I've listed out here. So First Financial Bank is going to go through an acquisition example for you guys.
Okay, thanks, Amber. So, one of the things that maybe Amber didn't mention that you could do with that extra income would be to buy a second practice. So keep that in mind too. So this example, what I want to do is kind of lead you through, how did Amber get to that, 3 times, multiple on your DVM salary? How does that really happen? And she talked about a few of those, those things. So rent, paying yourself that administrative management, sort of fee as well. So let's walk through, this income statement, this expense statement, and talk about how that actually happens. And as a bank, what we're looking at. So this example, again, we're just going to use some very round numbers. Her salaries were even better than mine in this example, but let's say that you've got a vet practice and the gross income annually is about 1.5 million. So a couple of things I want to point out on this slide is, one, take a look at the salary and wages for the DVMs. So we've got a 3 DVM practice, okay? And so the total salary is $264,000. So just to make it a nice round, easy example, let's say each one is making $88,000 as an associate DVM. Okay, so that's what you're bringing home. You've got other, expenses on here. This obviously is very abbreviated, but the other one that I want to point out to you would be the lease. So the lease for this practice is $72,000 a year, and we're going to come back to that. So I want you to remember that number. At the end of the day, after all expenses, net profit for this $1.5 million grossing practice is $225,000. Okay. So if we use an income approach, and we are going to have follow-up sessions in this series, and so we're going to dive even deeper into some of this information. But let's say that one of the approaches that we can use to come up with a purchase price is going to be cash flow. Okay, it's based on cash flow. So that net profit, the cash flow at the end, $225,000 in our example, we're going to say that this is a pretty healthy practice. We're going to 5 times multiple, and the purchase price, if you were going to buy this vet practice, would be $1,125,000. Okay, so that's not your total loan amount. We're going to look at this as a total project. So included in the total project cost are going to be things like closing costs. There's guarantee fees for the SBA, working capital. There may be other things in that loan, new equipment, etc. So let's say in this example that the total project is going to be $1,270,000, and your lender will help you come up with that final amount and work through all those numbers with you. You're going to need to be prepared with a 10% down payment. There are a couple of ways that can happen. So you may have 10% down in savings, okay? And so that would be wonderful if you do. You may have a friend or family member who wants to gift you that 10% down payment. That's also wonderful. If that's the case, take it. Come talk to me, and we're going to get you a practice. So the other ways that can happen, though, is that the seller can also carry half of that down payment on what's called full standby. And then you would only be required as that associate vet, probably paying off student loans like we talked about, trying to save some cash up because of, you have this dream of ownership. You would only then need to come up with half of the down payment. All right. So let's just say in this example that's how that's going to work, that the seller is going to carry $63,500. You are going to bring $63,500 to closing. So your total bank loan is $1,143,000. So if we look at that bank loan, and let's just assume, unfortunately, because interest rates are going up, this is a little bit high in this example, but we're hoping that they're going to slow down. So right now, let's just assume it's a 6.5% interest rate for a 10-year term. So traditionally, business loans are a 10-year period of time. Okay, that's how long that we'll finance or amortize out the loan for you. The monthly payment on that would be almost $13,000. So what we look at is, what is that yearly payment? Because we need to be sure that you, as the new owner, can pay your debt, Okay, we're also going to be sure that globally you can pay all of the other debt that you already have. Because at the end of the day, if you can't pay every one of debts, not just the debt to us, you won't be successful. So we're going to look at all of that. So in this example, your yearly payment is $155,736. Okay. Now, if you remember a couple of slides ago, we said that the net profit for this practice was $225,000. Okay. So what we need to do is take your yearly debt payment that you're going to need to pay to the bank for your practice loan. We're going to need to subtract that from the net income. When we do that, you've got just over $69,000 left. Okay. Now remember, that net income already included you paying the DVM salary. There were 3 DVMs. All 3 in this example were making $88,000. So you know you're taking home that $88,000 paycheck, okay? And now you're also taking home just over $69,000 because that's what's remaining, okay? That's coming to you as owner's income. So right away, you've gone from making $88,000 to $157,000 a year. Now, let's change it up just a little bit, and we're going to put another twist to this. If you add the real estate to this purchase, so quite often, Ashley and I talk to associate veterinarians, again, who are fearful that they're not ready or who become more fearful when they see the price tag on the practice or the estate. And one of the things that they do is automatically assume that they cannot afford to buy both the business and the commercial real estate where that practice is operating. Really, that's not true. And I want to work through this example because it's so important. And I encourage every associate veterinarian that I talk to explore all options. And absolutely, let's look at the numbers. If it's a possibility for you to purchase the real estate, let's work through the math. Let's see if it cash flows. Because almost 9 times out of 10, it is the best way to go. So in this example, we're going to add just over $450,000 to the loan to purchase the real estate. Okay. So the new bank loan is $1.6 million. Okay. So when we went back to that project cost, essentially what we did was add this $457,000. There may be some additional fees and we'll have to work through, changing the numbers just slightly. But for this example, the new bank loan is going to be $1.6 million. Okay. This is going to be amortized over 15 years rather than 10. What's really interesting is that often we can do this over 25 years. Okay. So the way that we can do that with the real estate is look at the ratio of the value of the real estate versus the value of the practice. Okay. If the value of the real estate is 51% or more, then we can do a loan over 20 years. In this example, we can only do that over 15 years, okay? The practice is valued higher than the real estate. Still, just by extending this loan for 10 years, you can see the difference that makes. Your monthly payment is almost $14,000. Your yearly payment is $167,000. That's really not much more than if you were buying the practice alone. Now, what's really important is that I asked you to remember that number, the lease value, the lease amount in that expense spreadsheet. It was $72,000. So if you had bought just the practice, okay, paid yourself your DVM salary, taken that extra money left over from the net income, that would have been great, right? I mean, automatically you were doubling your income. That's wonderful. But now you have to stop and think, wait a second, I was paying $72,000 in a lease amount annually. Now you pay that to yourself because you own the real estate. So now you're going to take home the remaining profit after the debt service, okay, which is $57,744. You're also going to take home the $72,000 that you were paying the lease to either the owner or the landlord. Now you're also taking home your DVM salary. So instead of taking home $88,000 as an associate DVM, With this example, you've paid all your debt, your business is cash flowing, and the owner's income is now $217,744. That's a huge difference.
All right, thank you for going through that example. That was really awesome to see the numbers play out. And as you guys are thinking, there's other reasons for ownership than just the numbers. So what are they? I moved across the country last year with my husband due to his job, and we were looking for a veterinary practice in the area. And I found one, went through the valuation process, brought those numbers back to the current owner of the clinic, and had some discussions and negotiations about that. She wasn't pleased with what the numbers were showing her clinic was worth, and was really hoping that this would be her retirement, her nest egg. So after deliberate conversation and getting more into it, we were venturing into maybe we do a partnership. Maybe I buy in or I relief. We were trying to figure out different options to make this work in order to have a transfer of ownership eventually. I am very fortunate enough when we were going through this process that I realized our medical styles were not lining up. What we envisioned for where the practice was going to go was not lining up. The culture, the environment pieces, all of those were just a little bit off with what my vision was and what her vision was. And so I encourage you guys, when you are looking at ownership, if you are considering partnering with someone, make sure to do your due diligence beforehand. Make sure these 4 things on the slide here line up with each other. It's just like when you enter into a marriage, you're not going to agree all the time, but it is something that you don't want to end up in a divorce. And I have seen that happen where practices go through difficult times and stalemates because the owners cannot agree of what is happening. Before we delve in any deeper into partnership, we need to take a step back and look at 2 important principles, one being your why and one being your hedgehog concept. We talked about this a little bit earlier, figuring out what your why is, why you are interested in that. And I challenge you guys after the CE is over to write that down tonight. The hedgehog concept is developed in a book called Good to Great by J.L. Collins, another great book that you should put on your reading list. And it is a simple concept that flows from the deep understanding of 3 different circles. 1, what are you the best at and deeply passionate about in the world? 2, what are you the best at in the world? 3, what drives your economic or resource engine? You guys might be wondering why they picked a hedgehog for this. Well, when a hedgehog sees a predator and a predator comes by, what does the hedgehog do? It rolls in on itself. And this is something that we can take with us to business models, because we do have to look inwards to figure out why we're doing this and what can we do to benefit this mission. How does this fit into a practice? The practice model has to start with you. It comes from you. There are many different practice models out there. And so I'm sure you guys have worked with people who are really, really great leaders and other people who are not so great. Can you think of the traits that differentiated them? With the practice models, there's multiple types out there. Like I said before, you can have a solo practitioner, you can have a multi-DVM, you can have a practitioner that's got an associate and a few support staff in a rural area. My friend does this. I could not do that. That would not be the right practice model for me, but they're all out there. There's pros and cons to each, and they're not created equally either. As soon as you add that first employee, your role changes. You're looked to as a leader. That doesn't necessarily mean you are a leader, but you're looked to as one. The same is really true for anybody who works in any environment with another person. The most successful owners are great leaders. One of the biggest mistakes we make as a whole profession is we try to be everything to everyone, and we fall short on all accounts when we do this. So figure out why you do what you do, and then you either need to find a job, buy into a practice, start up your own that allows you to achieve this. I have advice from some really terrific, wonderful owners who have successful practices for you. They suggest to get the necessary business skills. We have 3 more CEs coming up towards the rest of this year. And we also have Aspiring to Thriving coming up as well. That'll happen in July for you guys to keep learning more about business. We also have various other CEs going on. There's a ton of CEs on the internet, different books you can read. The information is out there. Hone your management, leadership, communication, and people skills. You can do this in your practices currently. You do not have to be in charge of anything. People are already looking up to you as that leader, and you can take these skills and practice them. In all walks of life, surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. They're going to be the ones that take you to the next level and push you. Work on the business, not just in it. A lot of times people forget to work on their business, and by the time that they go to sell, the business is not where it should be. When you don't know something, use advisors, mentors, and consultants. That's why we're here. We're here to help you. We're here to challenge you. We're here to take you to the next level that you want to go. And another big one, make time for personal life. We already have so much burnout and compassion fatigue in our industry, so please make this a priority. What are your options for buying a hospital? We're going to be talking about this in our next CE, but we're going to be showing you the pros and the cons of each of a buy-in, buyout, or startup. Now, First Five Financial is going to talk about acquisition do's and don'ts.
All right. So an acquisition or a buyout, there are some things that we commonly advise you to do when looking to purchase a practice, and some that, maybe either red flags or things that you should avoid when taking that leap and becoming a practice owner. So first and foremost, understand the business that you're getting into and its differentiators. So what makes this practice different than the others in the area? There might be some corporates, there might be some emergency vets, there might, whatever is in that area, what is making you different and stand out from those others. So know that about the business you're looking to acquire, and definitely use that moving forward. Know the current cash flow opportunity. So talk to the people around you, and the next point here, leverage your veterinary experts. Talk to us at the bank, talk to your consultants, know what that current cash flow is of that business, because realistically, you have to make sure that you want to make sure you're paying yourself those wages that we talked about earlier. You want to make sure that you can make, enough to warrant becoming a practice owner. So know what that cash flow opportunity is, and make sure that you're not paying above what you should be. And again, leverage us as the experts. You guys, have been going to school for a long time to become experts in your field, and we don't expect you to be experts in ours. So let us do what we do and help you through this entire process, so that you can, better do what you're experts at as well. Expect the unexpected through this process. I think that's one thing that a lot of people forget, and will get, a little bit shocked as we go through this, of some of the, bumps in the road, or things that come up, or kind of, I'm going to say hurdles that we have to get over, but things do happen. So expect the unexpected and be prepared for that. And then you want to be able to budget and forecast future performance. So what do you think you can do with this practice? Will that cash flow be there? Will you make what you're, wanting to down the road? Make sure that that is a big piece of your plan moving forward. What you're, forecasting as your future revenues, and, creating budgets that align with that. when it comes to things that you shouldn't do when acquiring a practice, we want you to see the potential in these practices. We never want you to pay for it. So don't limit yourself based off of what you see right in front of you. When you get in there, you're going to be able to mold it to what you want, be that leader you want to be, and make it your own, essentially. And that goes with acquiring a practice that's already established. But we never want you to pay for your future potential. That's your sweat equity that you're putting into it. So we want you to pay for what is there and what you're actually taking over, and then see where you can get it down the road. And we discussed this other one earlier today. Don't be emotional. So, with some of the situations we've seen recently, and Swanda's example when she was talking about a value of a practice, and we'll probably talk about this more in future webinars, but we're looking at a 5 times multiplier in that situation, which allowed that practice to cash flow. And again, those were just examples, but that's a good indicator. A 5 times multiple of what that cash flow is a typical value of a business. And we're seeing some of these corporate buyers and things like that come in, and they're just outbidding to the point where it doesn't cash flow, and it would not make sense for you to keep going with that. And is heart-wrenching as that can be when you have your heart set on a practice, do not get emotional. Another practice and opportunity will be out there, and at the end of the day, it's a business decision, and you have to do what makes the most sense in that regard. Again, don't assume that bad trends are easily fixed, or that good ones will continue when you take over. So we've seen it all. and I'm sure both Amber and Swanda can agree with me that when we look at kind of some of the things that go on in vet practices that our clients are acquiring, there are some cultural things or things that are happening that can be difficult to overcome and to fix. So don't assume that you can get in there and easily transition and everything's going to be fine in a week. Typically not the case. Can, as we mentioned, put that sweat equity in and get it to where you want it to be? Absolutely. But just don't go in there thinking that it's going to be super easy, because it is, it can be challenging. It can be a long road, but you can get there. Again, don't get into a bidding war. A lot of times with some of these, we're looking at, when we're talking about 5, 6 multipliers over here, we're looking at 18, 19, 20 sometimes on the flip side. So don't get into a bidding war to the point where it doesn't make sense for you financially to move forward with a transaction. And then lastly, do not accept poor or outdated financials. You want the entire picture of what you are getting into. So, it can be a major red flag when you're looking to acquire a business and they're not willing to give you that full financial picture. It can, and it doesn't always mean that they're hiding something, but in some cases, things do pop up. So you definitely want to make sure that you're getting all of those financials. And we'll talk more about that, I think, in the coming slides, especially. I think that's one of the things that Amber is going to discuss on her next one. Some of the financial statements and things that you want to look for.
If you are interested in ownership, but maybe not ready to jump into it today, here's a list of different things to get you started. As Ashley mentioned, learning how to read and interpret profit and loss statements, balance sheets, those are essential and important to your practice. And then when you go to buy, when you go to sell, you will make sure that your financial statements are in order. We have seen some very interesting ones before, but that is a really good tip to take forward. You also want to look at your practice information management software systems, your PIMs. A lot of these are starting to go to the cloud base, and so I would encourage you to investigate some of the newer ones, do demos. They're all free online. And look at your key performance indicators. These are how a practice evaluates its health, how it keeps track of its big categories for spending, and how you can track changes over time. Again, going back to that reading list, I gave you guys 2 books already that you can put on there, but reading everything about leadership, business, culture, management. If you're not a huge reader, there's podcasts, there's other platforms out there for you guys. You can always expand your network. Networks should be fluid, they should be growing. They can always get bigger and better. And First Financial will talk about in a little bit how to create a really great business plan. I'm going to turn it over to them of what else you can do to be prepared.
Okay, so one of the questions that we get all the time, again, associates worried that they're not quite ready, or, what do I need to do to be ready? And really the steps are pretty simple, and our advice is pretty simple. Although my husband might argue that the first one I haven't mastered, control spending. It's like losing weight. We know exactly what to do, but we just don't always do it. It's the same thing. So control your spending. Really think about, if your goal is ownership, and that is, ultimately where you want to be, think about everything that you're purchasing, and how does that impact your cash flow? How does that impact your debt? What does that look like? Could you have put that money into savings? So think about that and really control your spending. Eliminate revolving credit. Okay, and so that's one of the things that we really focus on, and really, whether you're talking about buying a house or buying a practice or whatever that is, revolving credit is always trouble, and so try to eliminate revolving credit if at all possible. Investing in real estate is okay, and so a lot of people will ask us, is it okay if I buy a house, when I get out of vet school? Is that going to be okay? Absolutely. Investing in real estate is always okay. Now, we still have to examine whether or not you're able to pay all of your debt, and so that come into play as far as your monthly and annual debt service for that real estate. But ultimately, we could use that as collateral on purchasing a practice, and so that's perfectly fine to invest in real estate. Know your credit score. And so one of the things I'd like you to do, if you don't know your credit score, if you don't have, kind of a Credit Karma or one of those, kind of credit tracking apps, that you can have now, do that. Okay. So, when in the next week or so, as you're going back thinking about things that you learned, or hopefully, kind of some food for thought, and we've excited you maybe about this opportunity of ownership. One of the things I'd like you to do is know your credit score. And we don't have necessarily a number that we're looking for, but we want you to be servicing all of your debt. We don't want to see that things have gone to collection, that you have late payments. Those are going to be huge red flags for us. We know that you're going to have student debt, and it's okay. When we look at your net income, we are going to look beyond student debt. Save for a down payment. So every bit that you can come back, put back, the closer you are to having that 10% down. Keep good financial records. It is so interesting, the number of people that I talk to every day, and I tell them, I'm going to need to see your past 3 years of tax returns. And they sort of stutter around, goodness, I think I'm going to have to find those, or I don't know where they are. Let me try to print those, and what website did I use, or I'm going to have to talk to my accountant. Keep good financial records and know how to access them. Okay. Whether you own or you don't, personal financial records are just as important as your business financial records. As an owner, I would expect you to be able to access your financial records. I expect the same thing from you for your personal financial records. And then also have an updated personal financial statement. I'm going to put this link in the chat, even though I really hope it abbreviates when it didn't. So sorry about that in the chat, but there is a link in the chat to the personal financial statement that the SBA puts out on their website. And it's what we use at the bank. It's what most SBA lenders would ask that you fill out. But if you've never filled out a personal financial statement, that's my second challenge for you. Know your credit score and go ahead and fill out a personal financial statement. Now, this might be a little alarming to those of you that do have a lot of student debt, because as you look at, my assets, so what do I own, what do I have versus what do I owe others, it might be a little overwhelming when you look at that. So what I'd like for you to do is look at your personal financial statement and then take out your student debt. After that, if you have a positive net worth, you're in great shape. You're in great shape, okay? So that's my second challenge. Now, when we think about financial statements, Amber mentioned in an earlier slide to do some research, and I completely understand when you are in a professional school like, veterinary college, there's not a lot of time to talk about business. And that's something that you always have to seek outside of that clinical education that you're getting. But 3 financial documents that we are going to go over in more detail in a later CE are these 3 on the sheet. So a balance sheet, an income statement, and then a cash statement, okay? Those are the 3 financial documents that when you're looking at a practice, you need to understand what you're looking at. And so I would challenge you to do some research on those 3, come back to the CE that we're going to offer in a few weeks, and we're going to break these down so that you have a better understanding of each one. Again, these should be current. They should not be outdated. And the owner should be able to produce these. You might need to sign an NDA. So you might need to sign a non-disclosure agreement with that owner, which is perfectly acceptable and to be expected. But once you've done that, then you should have the ability to look at all of the financial statements, up-to-date financial statements. So that means not only last year, but it means that year, the current year also. So right now, if you were talking to someone about their practice, I would expect them to at least produce financial statements through the end of the first quarter of this year, of 2022. So the other thing that was mentioned that you need to do is write a business plan. And I would say that, Ashley and I have received everything from a 1-pager to something that's larger than a phone book and had to be shipped in an Amazon box. And so, neither one are wrong. But the biggest question we get is, why do you even need a business plan? Why do you want me to write a business plan? And so, we're not going to go through all of the parts of a plan tonight. And certainly we can do that. That's what consultants and lenders, that's what we're all here for, is to help you with the business plan. But the starting point is for you to really have an understanding of why is it even important, okay? Now, yes, it's important because whoever's going to give you money probably wants to see it, right? But more importantly than that, it should be a living, breathing map for your business, okay? It should be something that you refer back to, okay? Starting out, you're going to look at the feasibility of your business model. So is this even a good business model? Is there a market in the area for the services that I want to provide? How many other practices are offering these same things? Am I different at all? If you're not different, if you don't understand your differentiators, how are you going to attract those clients? Because you have to think about, we not only want to maintain what we have, but we want to grow. And so how do we gain, market share? How do we do that? And so you've got to understand what makes your practice different. All of this goes back into your mission and vision, and that's your why. Everything that you do for your business, you should be able to come back to your mission and vision and understand and see how it fits. And if it doesn't fit with the mission and vision of your practice, you probably shouldn't be doing it, okay? And sometimes that's easy to get caught up in, this is a really great idea, or this would be really cool to do. And, oh, this other practice was doing this, and this is just a great idea. If it doesn't fit with your mission and vision, should you be doing it? Okay. And so the business plan really is important as you map out not only your business from the beginning, but as your business grows. And then one of the other things is, we want to see financial projections in your business. So we are going to look back and see 3 years of past financial information about the business that you're acquiring, that you're buying out. But we need to see in the future also, how are the changes that you're going to make, how are they going to impact revenues and expenses of your business? If this is a startup, we definitely want to look at financial projections. What revenues are you going to be generating based on your plan? And so it's important that you take the time and that you really use the resources available to you from consultants and others in the industry to create a really good, smart map for your business from the very beginning. Okay, so we've made this sound really easy, right? So it can be a little overwhelming, but one of the most important things that you can do that will make it so much easier and hopefully more enjoyable is create a good team. You want a lender that knows the industry, one that knows veterinary practice inside and out. You want a great consultant who also is an industry expert. Accountants, attorneys, you need all of these people to be key players on your team. And most importantly, you want these to all be individuals that you trust, that you can count on to help you make great decisions for you, for your business, and also for you personally, for your family.
It is not all about the destination. I want you guys to enjoy the journey. My 4 big challenges for everybody here tonight is to 1, figure out your why, 2, figure out your hedgehog concept, 3, that financial assessment that Shawanda was talking about a little bit earlier. Please take the time to download that and complete it after this is over. And 4, dig into the business plan a little bit more, look at examples online, and figure out if this is the right path for you. If you guys have questions, we're going to have a Q&A, but if you have something that you want to come talk to us about, or you just want to say hi after the lecture, that is great. All of our information is here on the slide, so please reach out. We love hearing from everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, Amber. And like she said, yeah, we love to hear from you. It's never too early to get started. So definitely reach out to any of us if you have questions. And it looks like we do have a couple of minutes left. One thing that I did want to point out, and I think Erin just mentioned this in the chat again, please go to that link and fill out all of your information for the race credit. That's not a survey or anything about us. That's just so that you can get credit for attending with us tonight. So definitely make sure you go fill that out. Any issues or questions, again, definitely let us know. But let's get to a couple of questions before we run out of time here. All right. So one question we got, you mentioned multipliers. Is there a typical one that is used when valuing a practice?
Do you want, Amber, do you want to take that, or do you?
Yeah, I definitely can take that. There isn't a typical one. There's an average put out by Simmons, who's one of the biggest veterinary corporations out there for doing this type of stuff. And right now, their average is about 4.7. A lot of people get hung up on the multiplier. It's something that when you do evaluation and when you get evaluation done on a practice, whether that's Simmons, whether that's from us here at Blue Heron Consulting, they will make sure to have all of that information in there for you and let you know what they valued the practice at and what they're using for that multiplier. And so that's the 4.7 is usually the average, but practices can fall below and practices can go above. Corporate tends to just have multipliers going above. They're obviously corporations and able to do that.
Yeah, and I'll add, Amber, that's exactly what we're seeing too. And so we, through the loan process, we will also have a third party, neutral, SBA approved company do evaluation of the business as well. We get a lot of questions, I know Ashley and I do, about, should I have evaluation done before, as a seller, should I have evaluation done before, or should I just wait, and let the borrower do that through the loan process? And really, if I were the seller, I would probably want to have evaluation done before, because it can be emotional. Amber gave the example of talking with an owner and they really feel often like their practice is worth more than it might be. And so you want to avoid all of those surprises. The company that we use through the lending process, that valuation is about 100 pages long. And so we boil it all down into that one multiplier, but there are so many things that go into that. And that's really important to keep in mind.
Absolutely. And all right, so we have another question that is kind of along these same lines. Heard some talk that corporate multipliers, going back to that, may be dropping and that corporate acquisitions may be slowing down. Any insight based on what our teams are seeing? And I can kick it off if you don't mind. I mean, I definitely, I think just, attending some of the conferences and speaking to some people, I think that's absolutely true. I think that it is slowing down, but they're definitely still out there and still aggressively purchasing. So, definitely if you're looking to acquire practice, know that it's still, something that's going on and something that's out there. But yeah, the landscape might be changing a little bit, but sorry, Amber, go ahead.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. I've seen the same thing as well. I would never get into a bidding war with a corporate. It's just not worth it. But yeah, I have seen corporations still looking for those 2+ doctor practices out there. And especially if the owners are going that route and looking that route too, they're definitely still out there, but there's still a place for private practice and for still acquiring or starting up your own or potentially even buying into a practice.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, I think that it's very cyclical and, it's not different than many other, medical professional industries. And so, but there are absolutely lots of practices out there who are really very interested in selling to an independent associate veterinary owner. And so don't be discouraged, get your name out there, talk to those owners. Another thing we see quite often is that corporate entities don't necessarily want to buy the real estate. Sometimes that's where most of the value is when a current owner is selling their practice. And so that might be something that would sway them, is if they know that that associate vet is also interested in buying the real estate. So there's lots of different ways to work those deals. And so, yeah, just have those conversations, but don't be discouraged about some of the background noise, that we often hear.
Absolutely. All right, we got just a couple more minutes left, so let's do one more. You guys gave a lot of great advice tonight about what to do with business plans and all of that. If you had to pick out one piece of advice for someone just starting out on their ownership journey, what would it be?
That is a very good question. I would advise to get into contact with someone that you know who has owned, that you trust, maybe a current employer right now, and just ask them and pick their brain a little bit about their triumphs and their failures and see where those are and see what you can do differently to start out, and even reach out to someone like us, Blue Heron Consulting, because we can get you on the right path or give you advice in other areas as well.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's great advice, Amber, is really seek out those mentors, seek out others in the industry. I would also say just to really just immerse yourself in the information. So, if you feel like you have a deficiency maybe in, the area of business, not sure if you're going to understand looking at the financials or not, immerse yourself into that information. I will tell you that if you are smart enough to get through vet school, you are absolutely smart enough to be a successful owner. And so, you are very intelligent, and I would just immerse yourself and start learning the information that you feel like, maybe you don't know enough about. And that's a great place to start.
And just to piggyback off of Swanda, that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, you got through the hardest part already. You got through that school. You made it. So you'll definitely, be able to successfully be a practice owner and be able to understand, this information. And I think, one last piece of advice, it's funny, we were speaking to somebody else who was interested in practice ownership and was confused on where to start, and, simplifying it so much, but just follow directions. If you can follow directions, you can get through this process, utilize the experts, and just, so I think at the most basic level, just remember that if you can follow directions, you already got through vet school, we can get through the rest of this process.
And it's never too soon to call. So
Never.
that would be my other piece of
Yes.
advice. It's never too soon to call one of us. So it doesn't matter if that's a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, or,
Right.
Maybe all of a sudden something has fallen into your lap in the next 6 months you're going to need, or you're going to be ready. Give us a call and just start the conversation. That's the very first thing that you need to do. So.